taking the time to talk. And as I said before, we dig into the music discussion, I do want to just talk about the event that you held called Overcoming Everest. And I just want to, I'm curious where you first had the idea for that event.
Yeah, I actually was in Australia. It was probably about, I'd say 9 months ago, that we just were talking through some things that we'd love to do. You know, a long time ago, I lived on the streets for 2 weeks. Really passionate about homelessness and awareness, and we call it the love appointment, and reaching out to others in more than just words. And so we decided to do it, you know, actually do it. And so same thing with this idea. We really were like, okay, well, what season are we in? We're talking about mental health. We're really believing for the conversation around it to improve. And as much as we love words and words matters and songs matter, it's like, why don't we do something that really pulls in our community, that speaks to the spirit, I guess, of why we do music, is to bring people together around messages that really matter. And it's these kind of things that I think the church in general, bands like us, whatever, there's so many opportunities to do stuff like, mental health is like overcoming Everest every single day. So why don't we overcome Everest together, or at least try, And so that's kind of where the idea happened, and lots of conversations. And I think I brought it up with you, Danae, at lunch.
Yeah, totally, over sushi.
Yeah.
You were like, hey, how many laps of Stone Mountain would we have to do to, or first I think it was like, what could we do that would be, even close to, some kind of elevation that we could actually make up the entire height of Everest with a few laps. And we settled on Stone Mountain being the kind of a bit iconic around Georgia, and probably the highest mountain that's easily accessible. I'm not really sure, but that's what we decided on, and it snowballed from there.
That's fantastic. I'm curious, now that you've had a few days to kind of process what's happened. I mean, what stands out for each of you about the day and the participation and just the feedback that you've received now that you've actually been able to hold the event?
Sure, Ryan, you want to go for this one?
Yeah, no, I think, after doing the event, and then in the moment, it was like Mark said, it comes up as an idea, and then to see it kind of take off the way that it did, we probably had close to, I think 140, 150 or so people that came out specifically for the event, which was really awesome. But then to see how much awareness, when you gather 150 people together at any location, everybody starts asking questions. Hey, what are you guys doing? And it was just amazing to see people from all different walks of life, not just intentionally show up to the event, but even kind of unintentionally participate in the event. Like after finding out about what we were doing and why we were doing it, and seeing people going, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I've had my own journey in trying to maintain mental health, and I've dealt with anxiety, I've dealt with panic attacks, or we literally met a guy who told us his story about 2020 being the hardest year of his life, going in the darkest of places mentally, and it really he went on this crazy health journey. He lost 142 pounds and really went after it kind of in physical fitness, and he said, man, this has impacted me so much. I want to come out, and I want to climb with you. And I think just beginning to see, any time we gather together, just in agreement around whatever it may be, right? Of course, for us, the agreement around Jesus, and of course, in who he is, but also even something like a cause, like what we, did this event for, and seeing how many people go, man, that's my story, or that's my story, or can I be a part of this? And kind of seeing it not just being the words that we say, but the actions that we do. And I think seeing the ripple effect of that, of things going from conversations to action. I think we live in the day and age of everybody loves to talk, but not many people like to do, right? And to see it be, hey, we're taking this past the conversation and actually putting some things into action. I think seeing the relationships that were formed on the day, but then even the ripple effect conversations that have happened from there has been really eye-opening. And we weren't ever made to do this alone, and realizing it was just another opportunity for unity across different walks of life to say, hey, let's journey this together.
Yeah, I'm interested. You mentioned the ripple effects and the conversations and like the individual, you know, forward movement from all of the folks that were there. How do you think that this event will impact your future work as a band and as a group together?
Yeah, I think the clear takeaway for me walking up and down that mountain so many times was the difficulty of it alone. We did a few laps where I was like walking just by myself versus with people, with a team, and my prayer is that revelation. We were actually producing or filming for a documentary that we're putting together around this. So there's a media coming out around this little documentary we're doing on the day. And my prayer is that the impact and that ripple effect you're talking about is just that we continue ourselves as Futures and as a church, Greater Church. We have a global church with 11 campuses, Influences Church in Australia and Atlanta and Indonesia. And my prayer is that the local church that we're a part of, that the global church would continue just having these kind of conversations, but doing things that really impact our community. We love Sundays. We love what we get to do on Sundays and worship together, but there's so many opportunities on a Saturday, just like this at 8 a.m. at Stone Mountain, where we can gather people. And Micah from down the road, he's a station in the Army, just joins us and does 11 laps. Like, we're talking 24 miles just decides to jump on. And I think it's going to begin to shape what we do around the intentionality. We walked into this album and we walked into this walk with another level of intentionality. Really believing we just don't want to write a song, we don't just want to put out an album, we really want to tie this with something practical and something that matters and changes people's lives in a tangible way. You always hope to put out a song, I hope it impacts people, and it does for sure, but I think it's just going to really help us hone in on what intentionality, what's the reasons, what's the why behind the what for everything we do in another level.
Absolutely, and you did mention the new music that you released earlier this year, Hills and Horizons. I'm curious why you chose that title at the time, and how that kind of captures the theme of that project for you and that season in your band's group life.
Yeah, I'll jump on this. Hills and Horizons for us was a song that was probably our most collaborative song yet. We wrote in the throes of 2020 on a writing retreat in Savannah, Georgia. And as we came together, we actually, most of the album actually came from that retreat. And we would break off into different writing sessions. But really, on the last night, I believe, we all came together and Mark had this theme, this idea of hills and horizons, the ups and downs of life. And how sometimes it can just feel over and over again and those cycles, but learning to trust God throughout it all. And I think as we sat down and began to write on this, all of us together, it quickly became clear that it wasn't just my story or Mark's story or even us as a band story, but as the song began to develop and as the album began to take shape, it was like Hills and Horizons was the overarching theme for so many people. We're showing our friends and family, the mixes, the masters, and it's like people are relating so much to that theme of like 2020 has, it felt a bit like the Groundhog Day, cycles and cycles and going over and over again, but learning to trust God, learning to be okay with not seeing the big picture, and just really that overarching theme of the ups and downs of life, but having God with you there throughout it all and letting go and letting him take over, I think was just resonated so much with us. And so it was kind of no doubt, I feel like, after, I don't know if you guys agree with this, but I feel like for me there was no doubt. Maybe a month after that retreat, it was like, or a couple months after, we're listening to all the demos and it's like Hills and Horizons standing out as just that overarching theme. And it was a pretty easy decision to make that the album title, make that the really the congruent theme that threads all the songs together.
That's great. I'm curious, you mentioned that most of these songs were written in 2020. So over 2 years ago or 2 years ago, there's been a lot of life that has happened, and obviously different listeners have had the ability to kind of see some of these songs in their own light. I'm curious if there's a track or even a lyric on a track that kind of means something different to you now, or you see it in a different light than when you first wrote it and created it.
Ryan?
Ooh, that's a tricky question. I think because I think so much of the songs that we wrote, like was already been mentioned, were written in 2020 in the height of pandemic and uncertainty, and everybody looking at life in a totally different way, in an unforeseen way. And I remember a phrase I felt like God gave me early in the pandemic was, Ryan, this whole thing hasn't changed you; it's just exposed you. It's just exposed what you really believe in, and it's exposed what's really valuable to you. It's exposed what you've been running from or what you're running to. And when we wrote all these songs in such an uncertain time, in such a trying time that everybody was going through, it's interesting. People are actually surprised when they hear the album that these songs were written in 2020, because a lot of the songs are, to be honest with you, joyful, upbeat, if you will, like songs like Just So Good or Can't Steal This Love, or really all the way through, it kind of has this, very positive, very forward-moving type of outlook. And when people say, man, you were really battling, things in your mental health back then, you were really going through lockdown, these songs almost don't match the season that you say that you were in. And it was really, I think, funny how all that came about, because really when we face challenging times, we really have one of two decisions. Either to set up camp around our feelings and our uncertainty and just kind of nobody knows the trouble I've seen type of songs, right? And a lot of music is that, right? It's really building a song around what we feel in the moment. But all of these songs are actually a bit of the opposite. We're saying I may be facing uncertainty, I may be facing hardship, I may be facing the most dark days of my life, but it doesn't change the fact of who God is. And so, like David would say, where he says David encouraged himself in the Lord. These songs are a bit of that. I'm facing this, but this is who I know God is, and so I'm going to still say that God is good. I'm going to say you can take everything from me, but you can't take the love I have from God. And I think that's why this whole album means so much to us, because we had every opportunity to write songs around the dark days and the struggle, if you will. But instead we said, you know what, despite my feelings or my circumstances, it doesn't change the fact of who God is. So I'm going to write in faith, in boldness, in pulling myself out of the pit, if you will, type of songs. And so when I look back on the lyrics, to specifically address your question, I'm actually in a roundabout way proud of us, because I think we could have easily written an album and be listening to it now 2 years later when it's coming out going, oh, do you remember those days? But we're actually listening to an album going that we wrote songs, that we were facing dark times, but we were actually just continuing to talk about the goodness of who God is. And so that's kind of the way I kind of look at it.
Yeah, no, that's great, and that's a great way to look at it, to be able to have those kind of stand the test of time, if you will. I know that we're getting close to our scheduled time, so I want to close with one final question that can have a music or not music answer, depending on how you want to answer. But what are you most expectant for in the rest of this year, looking ahead with what you've already been able to accomplish so far?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's so many things, and let me just break that down and what so many things mean. We've been working, this album's taken 2 years, and it wasn't the only songs we wrote in that 2 years. And we've as a band, as a group, Futures, we've been writing and writing and writing. We probably have 60 songs in different genres. There's ideas in our heart and other artists that are forming with things like People Records, that is kind of like, this album is almost like launching for us this whole new journey, I guess. We've got Dreamers in Australia, which is the youth guys, have just released an EP. We've got a live album where we're going to record in 2 different countries at the same time. coming in May that we're going to record, and there's just so many songs and different artists even. It's just, yeah, it's been crazy. So it feels like this is kind of the beginning of what will be our most fruitful year yet, and we're very, very excited. And not anxious is probably the wrong way. We don't know. I don't exactly know how it's going to work out. We don't get to see the whole picture, but we are very, very excited for everything happening underneath the surface. And now it's just like, okay, let's walk this out, let's steward it well, and let's bring it to the world, in a way that honors God.
That's fantastic. I just want to thank you again, all three of you, for taking the time, and I wish you the best of luck with all you have coming up.
Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.